All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us here on the next edition of the Moving Beyond the Coronavirus Economy series. My name is Tom Dufour. I'm the founder and CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team. And today's topic is about bookkeeping and franchise bookkeeping. I know it seems like a topic that can sound at the surface as to be a little maybe dull or not interesting. But the reality is money flows, customers, cash flows coming in and out. Royalties have to get paid. This is a very important issue for franchisees and franchisors and the like. And I'm so glad to have a longtime friend and someone I've known for many years, Karina Miranda, and she's going to share with us a little bit about her background. And I've known Karina, goodness, if I think about it, it's got to be maybe 10, 12 years, something like that. It's been a long time. I can't believe it's been that long. And she's got tremendous background in franchising. So I will turn the floor over to you, Karina, to say hello and do a little introduction for us.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So quick about me. That's how I'll start, I guess, and then go from there. So I own a company called Bravo One that focuses on bookkeeping, majority for franchisors and franchisees. And like Tom said, I've been in the industry for about 11 years. I kind of fell into it by accident, and Tom was one of the first people I met when I started. So it's crazy how a certain amount of like a certain group of people just stay in your life, or you just randomly think about them. And Tom's definitely one of those people. And so being in the franchise world, I've pretty much played every single aspect. So I've done the corporate location with the franchisor. I've worked with different franchisees in their locations. So I've always been around for in one way or another with the franchising aspect, whether it's, helping out with the finances for the disclosure document or the ops manual pricing, running the royalties, MAP funds, ad fund fees, all the fun things that people don't technically like to think about all the time. And with that, I kind of just learned pretty much a whole new way of handling it. I feel like when people look at their finances, they feel like they're so stressed and they don't know where to start. They'll put it off because they're like, I'll just deal with this at the end of the year when it's tax time. Or they don't really know what they're looking at, whether it's a franchisor or a franchisee, and they just don't want to deal with it. So my whole goal with starting Bravo One was pretty much to educate and be on your team, whether it's as a franchisee or a franchisor. And I'm never going to be hiding behind a screen. So my goal was never to just send you a profit and loss whenever you ask for it and be like, here you go, have a good time trying to figure out these numbers. But I always have 15-20 minute conversations, whether it's a phone call or through Zoom every month, just saying, hey, this is your profit and loss, this is your balance sheet for the month, these are the percentages, how are we working? And just like every person is different, I feel like every franchisee or franchisor has different goals for their businesses. So that's why it's so important to talk through these, look at these percentages. How much are we spending on advertising? What are we doing for advertising? How much are the franchisees bringing in? What's different in their demographics? And we just talk through these things to see what's working for your company, have an open conversation about finances, which a lot of times can be very tedious. And we just talk about the current health, the growth, where you're going. Are you meeting your KPIs? What are your goals? Have these changed? Are there any major purchases? As a franchisee, for example, when you buy a truck, you don't think, oh, hey, let me tell my bookkeeper that I just purchased a vehicle, and, until the end of the year where it's tax time and they have to ask you for the amortization schedule. And with that, I don't just send you a profit and loss and I'm like, here, I know you don't know what these numbers mean, but we talk through them. I'll do weekly budgets with you. I'll work with you. And the difference between, a lot of times people are like, oh, what's the difference between a CPA and a bookkeeper? The best way I like to describe it is your CPA or your accountant or whoever's doing your taxes talks about the past, because everything that they're looking at is mostly already done. And your bookkeeper looks at the present. So you really can't have one without the other if you want to grow and thrive and really have a full understanding of that back end of your business. Because as business owners, there's so many other things. I mean, you have to run a company, you have to do the hiring, you have to do the advertising, especially when you're just starting out and you're kind of playing jack of all trades. So I'm here to help, and I'm always here to just be everyone's cheerleader pretty much and just be on everyone's team.
Well, Karina, thank you for that intro. And just to share with the folks who have joined on here recently, Karina, you've been with a franchisor from at the original, basically kind of company-owned territory through the franchising process to now managing franchisees of a growing system and growing from a slow to moderate growth to hyper growth, and then working with franchisees and advising franchisees. So Karina's literally been from kind of the small business startup all the way to a rapid growing franchise system to working with the new incoming franchisees, royalty collections, and going through the whole process and more, way more than that, of course, and helping clients with collections issues and funding issues and all kinds of things that she supports and helps. But targeting specific to some of the folks who might be in that are either currently franchising or new franchisors, or maybe thinking about franchising their business. I'd love for you to share and talk about a little bit how you work and help franchisees and some of the challenges that franchisees run into as to why they need, for example, a support bookkeeper such as yourself, and things maybe a franchisor needs to be looking for or be aware of when certain numbers or figures show up in a franchisee.
Yeah, so with franchisees, I feel like they got this franchise, they're so excited, they have so many goals, dreams, aspirations for it, and they just, I mean, I've been there starting my own business, I've been there from like helping train these people, they just want to hit the ground running. And so they have their mind in so many things, you know, I need to get the truck, I need to get the signage, I need to get the advertising, I need to hire someone, I need to get my books in order, maybe I need to get funding. There's just so many aspects. Some want to get a brick and mortar location, some want to hire people. And so they don't necessarily have the time to sit down and look at the finances. And before they know it, it's pretty much, in terms of money, we have no money, because they've just been running through everything, trying to get everything going. And then they don't have time to sit, look at their budget, just 10-15 minutes a day, and see really what's going on. So that's why it's so huge to just have that constant dialogue, that constant information flowing of, okay, what's going on.
Sorry to interrupt, but in your experience, and Karina, when you're working, especially with some of these franchisees, as they're launching, maybe their first year or two in business, how do most of them, how are they viewing their finances? If they don't work with someone like you, what do they do?
Some hire, you know, a friend or a wife to do their books, which is better than nothing, to be honest. But at the same time, those people also, they don't know what they're doing. They're just thrown into this role. Or they just kind of put it off on the wayside until it's time to, you know, file quarterly taxes or monthly taxes or year-end taxes. And they're like, oh, I haven't done any of this. So now they have hours of things to do, or they have to send it off to someone to do it. And it costs an arm and a leg because there's so much cleanup work. And not only that, but they're hurting themselves because they don't have that professional guidance of what's going on the whole entire time. So it's just really helpful to have someone there guiding you, knowing what they're doing, and not trying to just figure it out as they go.
Yeah. Well, I think that's helpful. And how can you give us a couple examples just of, let's say, a franchisee that you took on board that maybe started and they had been operating like you had described? Maybe a spouse was running the books, or they were just kind of loosely doing it themselves. And what kind of a turnaround you saw happen, and what problems you saw that you were able to help solve?
Okay, so there was, I'm not going to name names, but
Sure.
There's one franchise that I've actually been working with for about 4 years, one particular franchisee in this franchise. And they they've been doing on their own for about 5 years. And then they decided, okay, well, something's not working because I really haven't been profitable. So, and, they're working Sunday through Monday, maybe taking a day off in between here and there for a vacation or spending time with their family. They were married, they had kids, and I think that they were scared to hand it off to someone else. And it took me a while to really gain their trust. But again, I have that open dialogue. So it was very easy for me to try and talk openly about them and have them know that I understand where they're coming from. And after I got a hold of their books, in the first 6 months, there was a 21% increase in their net income. And that was huge. I think that was the biggest one I've seen. And it was for so many reasons. They were on autopilot. So they didn't know, first of all, that they had to up their prices for their services. They were at the same rate for about 3 years. And they were just like, okay, well, this works for me. We have money in the account. We can make payroll. We can make royalties, but they weren't looking at the demographics in their area, how much things have increased in price, especially now with inflation going on. This was a little bit back then, but we consider it now as well. And the person that they had managing their business for about 3 years, this was one of the horror stories, but they were actually taking money from the business and using it for their own personal things. And this business owner, this franchisee was on autopilot. So he wasn't realizing that, $200, $300 a month was gone from their credit card account being used for personal things. And just having someone being there and having these conversations 15, 20 minutes, a month, and being in their books every week saying, hey, this transaction seems off. Do you know what this was for? Kind of puts a better light on those situations so that could be avoided in the future. We also got to look at their advertising. What's approved within the franchise that's working for you? What, as far as advertising, where can you allocate expenses for PPC? Where can you allocate expenses for SEO? What other streams of advertising are working best for your business? So it's things like that we take a look at in franchises, whether it's the franchisor or the franchisee, to see how it works best. And I mean, that was huge because he never had that. He was just saying, okay, well, this works. So that not only that, with the 21% increase after a few years with me, he was able to just take a Friday off and be on his boat, which he loves because now he has a day off and he doesn't have to have that time in the office.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a great example. So here's this person, they're operating the business, and chances are for most franchisors, they're not going to be dug into the books in this regard. Mm-hmm. If he's been operating for 5 years before you got involved, like you said, he was on autopilot. He's probably average, right around average in the system, doesn't really stand out. And so now because of a quality bookkeeper coming in and paying attention, you increase profit, you catch some bad actors at his company, help him gain some control and clarity. And probably now that you're managing it, he's more interested because he understands it. Yeah. And so he's paying more attention to it, I would have to imagine. And then from the franchisor standpoint, I mean, for our clients or people tuning in, I mean, or for you folks that are on the line here, please feel free, by the way, to type in questions, comments, ideas. But to me, if you're listening, if you're a franchisor, if you're thinking of franchising, I think the importance of what Karina just said cannot be overstated and how critical it is, because what she talked about doing with managing the finances for that franchisee can literally be the difference between that franchisee being out of business in the next 24 months or staying in business for the next maybe next 10 years or 15 years and staying and producing healthy royalty revenue stream for you within your system. So I just think it's significant. I cannot overstate it enough that how important something that small, it seems so small what Karina was talking about doing, and yet has such a significant impact. So and Karina, I'd love for you maybe just talk a little bit about your experience with the franchisor and seeing maybe royalties and working with franchisees and franchisors and kind of how that all works, because you have a really unique position. Most folks are not kind of splashing in between with your experience on both sides.
Yeah, so I was actually with one specific franchise. Goodness gracious, it was about 8 years fresh out of college. And my degree was in education, so not at all what I fell into, but I think that education role played a huge aspect of everything that I was doing with the books, my organizational mindset as well. And so we started out me working in the corporate location. This specific franchisor really, at the time, again, they were just starting out. I think they had 4 locations when I started, really didn't have any systems processes in place, and just kind of threw me in there and was like, figure it out. No QuickBooks, no FreshBooks, no Wave apps, no Sage, no kind of financial thing. And they would essentially just get the royalty reports, log it in, not look at the bank statements, not look to see if anything was true, and kind of just take it at their word and be like, okay, cool. And they didn't really have the time to pretty much do the audits for the franchisees, look over everything, see how they're doing, see if they need any help, how can they improve, which is huge for royalties as well, especially and with ad fund fees and territory fees. And running those and looking those over, it takes time. And as a franchisor or as a general admin person, I play an admin role too. You're their right hand. Like, you have so many other things to do. And as the franchisor, you have 80 things to do, and there's 160 in your head at the same time. So you don't have the time to actually look at it and see if everything is true and accurate. And that's where I come in and take that headache off of you and let you know how they're doing, how they're performing, have those conversations, have that dialogue to set the success not only for your franchise, but for your franchisees individually as well. And then as a franchisee, I ended up working for 3 of the locations at one time. And I've been on that end too. Not only did I train the oncoming franchisees how to process royalties, but I was also on the other side processing the royalties. And eventually that franchise grew from, the 4 to well over 150 when I left. So I was kind of in the thick of it for the whole thing. And you see everything, and having that dialogue and tracking everything is so much easier from a franchise standpoint than saying, oh, it's the 10th of the month, it's the 5th of the month, royalties are due, and trying to just get everything done because you haven't done any finances at all. So it's again, having that dialogue, having that mindset of, okay, this person is here looking at my items every week. If there's going to be something that's red flagged, I'm going to know before the end of the month, or I'm going to see if I'm having a slow month. I'm going to see how much I'm netting, how much we're grossing, to see what we need to do to help. So it's huge with the processing royalties from the franchise side and the franchisee side, to just have that open dialogue and have someone there knowing what they're doing and knowing what to look at from both aspects.
Yeah, I think that's great. And just for total full disclosure, Karina helped me with the franchise that I had owned previously and had done work for our company as well, and kind of getting things cleaned up. And I will say, one of the things that when a franchisee is starting, most franchisors, and we help our clients go through this, most franchisors will provide their franchisee with a general ledger to take and upload into QuickBooks, or most are using QuickBooks is what they're typically using, QuickBooks Online, or some other accounting system. And my experience has been with franchisees is that the general ledger not general ledger, the chart of accounts, I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong terminology. For the chart of accounts, the franchisees, it's been my experience that many of them have no idea how to properly use the chart of accounts and miscategorize expenses and income into the wrong buckets, into the wrong chart of accounts. And so I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about that, because I think it's relevant in helping franchisees get set up on the right foot. So the chart of accounts to start, but how do they use it? And what's been your experience with that?
So QuickBooks has this amazing feature, I guess, that they'll try to automate where something goes. And I feel a lot of people are like, yeah, that sounds right. This is dues and subscriptions, and they'll put it in there in that bucket. Some items have a larger tax deduction at the end of the year than other items. So it's very important for the person, whoever is doing the franchise's books, to really understand a chart of accounts, where things can fall to be more beneficial for that franchisee or that franchise. And that's kind of where everything kind of just falls into place when it's time for taxes. And you're like, okay, well, am I breaking even? Am I getting more money? Well, how did you sort it out? And again, that's an education that you really have to follow up with, because tax laws are changing constantly. And that just starts with the chart of accounts, proper use of the chart of accounts, and actually going through and reading what you're putting in is huge. And a lot of people just don't have the time because they're running a business.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think the value certainly that you bring to your clients and customers is making sure, and I really think from a franchisor standpoint, having a person helping facilitate that understands franchising, that I've been in franchising for almost 19 years now, and there are suppliers that understand franchising, and a whole bunch of vendors and suppliers that just don't. They just think it's like any other small business. And while there are a lot of similarities, it is different. For example, you have to use the chart of accounts that's provided, and paying royalties, and making sure you're saving for advertising fee and advertising requirements that have to come into play. And I think, Karina, with things that you do and have done, really help franchisors keep that franchisee on a straight pathway. And as the franchisor, you want to have a franchisee that is organized, is financially organized, because I've seen this happen many times where the franchisor goes to help a struggling franchisee. They say, oh goodness, your revenue's been down for 3 months now. We need to see what's going on. It's a pattern now. And then they dig into the books and it's a disaster. Things are miscategorized and they can't help it. So I'd love for you just to kind of comment and add to that.
It's so much less stress if you keep it up from a franchisee standpoint and a franchisor standpoint. I mean, I've been on the corporate end of that, definitely, where, it's been 3-4 months when we only had about 20 franchises. And I'm like, oh, they're not doing very good. What's going on? And then when I'll ask to do an audit of their accounts, they weren't even using any sort of QuickBooks. They were just looking at their bank statements and we're like, okay, well, this is how much we made. They weren't sure how to best utilize anything. So the chart of accounts is huge because it gives a clear point and a clear viewpoint for the franchise and the franchisor of where all of the money is being allocated if used properly. And when it's time for, a franchisor or the corporate location to help a franchisee, they know exactly what's going on and what's being looked at and where they could use that help, or where they could use more resources and energy to be more profitable, which is at the end, everybody wants the franchisee to succeed. The franchisee does, and the franchisor wants them to succeed as well.
Yeah. I love it. Well, Karina, I'd love for you to make sure you get in any points here. I've kind of taken you off your script that you probably came prepared with. I kind of turned this into an interview. So I sorry for taking that over. I just want to make sure we talk through some key items. What do you have on your list here that you want to make sure you talk through?
Actually, we talked through, I had 2 pages of notes written, and we went through most of them, so that works. But also, I just want to reiterate how much stress it takes away from franchisees and franchisors, just knowing that someone has their back, knowing what they're doing and knowing what they're looking at, and being in their books at least once a week. Most businesses fail within the first 5 years. I hate to just be a Debbie Downer at this point, but it's because they're not looking at their finances, or they're not understanding the finances. They get so stressed, they're not taking the time to clear it up. So it's so important to just really have that open conversation, have those weekly budgets, have those discussions, really take the time, even if it's just 20 minutes a month, to look and see what's working and what's not working, run comparisons versus last quarter versus this quarter, previous year to this year, and see what's going on, and see, what worked last year that maybe isn't working this year. And all of those things, yeah, you kind of know because you're in the thick of it, but really when you look at the numbers, the numbers don't lie. So that comes down to, like you said, the chart of accounts, keeping regular reporting, having conversations, knowing, that you could trust your staff, and all of those things just come to fruition when you look at the books. And it's something so small that people don't really think about until it's time to do my taxes. And numbers aren't just for taxes. Numbers are for your health as a business owner. So it's people put it off and don't think it's important, but really it's the backbone of your business.
I think it's a great point, because very often the franchisee is out there, they bought this new franchise and they need to get revenue coming in, and they're just sometimes scraping together helpers, hired whomever they can find, a warm body to get out in the field and help them with whatever they're trying to do while they're building the business, especially that first year or two, while they're just kind of sorting it out until they get some good staff and people figuring it out. And most franchisees, they've never managed the cash flow of an operating business. And so that's one of the reasons, Karina, I'm so thankful for you to be here, is to really help reiterate and emphasize the importance, especially for existing business owners that are franchising their business. Many of you this has become second nature on how to kind of manage your cash flow, and you've got a process that is working, but your franchisees aren't there yet. And being able to take that burden off and working with someone, for example, like Karina with Bravo One, and they can provide back-end solutions to the franchisor and to your franchisees as kind of a preferred vendor or preferred supplier to help out your system and get that aggregated. So Karina, talk how you work with franchise systems and how you can kind of collaborate more in a strategic relationship with the franchisors.
Yeah. So, I do it, like I said before, on a corporate level or a franchise level. And, whether they want everything streamlined, so all of their franchisees are pretty much under one umbrella and they see where everything is going. And, one person runs the royalties every month, one person not really controls because it's each individual franchise, but one person looks over the books and manages everyone, reports to the franchises and the franchisees. I could handle all of that as well. From a franchisor standpoint, I could look over everything and see, okay, well, what's going on, what's performing, process royalties on their end or the franchisees end, look at their bank statements, talk to them, let the franchisor know, hey, these people are killing it, which is the things I love to say, this person's doing so well, talk to them, see what they're doing because they could help others. Or, hey, we need to help this person out. It looks like they're struggling. We need to talk to them and see why. And, having those open conversations with the franchisors and the franchisees is pretty much how I want to help. I don't want to just hand a profit and loss or run the royalties and you never hear from me. I love being on your team. Like, I love educating. I love helping out. I want to see you succeed. I want to be your cheerleader. So if you just call me up and say, hey, this person's struggling or this person's having a terrible 3 months, what's going on? Again, when I was with that franchise, I would call these franchisees and bring the human aspect back to, the financial part. It's not just a robot behind a screen, being like, hey, what's going on? Sometimes it's some personal things, which is fine. You could lend an ear. So I kind of put the human aspect back into everything and the education aspect back into the franchise world, whether it's the franchisee or the franchise, and make everything unified and hopefully educational.
Thank you. That's phenomenal. And you are right. My experience in working with you is, and I've seen you work with other clients in the past, that sometimes you are just you're listening, right? You're just literally someone to listen, to understand, and then help educate them, to teach them how all of these parts impact their financial success as an organization. I'd love to open it up for our guests that are on the line here. If anyone has a question, comment, please feel free to type it into the question here, or just hit the raise your hand feature, or just chat. I'd like to say something. I'll go ahead and unmute. We've got a relatively small group here, so I'd love to open that up excuse me, for conversation. And Karina, while people may be unmuting or going through that, would you mind sharing how they can get a hold of you, your website? What's the best way for someone to reach out if they're interested in talking with you about how you can support them?
Absolutely. So my email is Karina, Karina, at Bravo1Projects with an S at the end.com, because I decided to have the world's longest email. And my website is bravo1projects.com. My Instagram is bravo1projects. My LinkedIn is Karina, last name is Miranda, Karina, last name Miranda. And my Facebook is also Bravo1Projects.
Great. Great. And that's Bravo, the number one.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, I'm not seeing any questions come through here. So I would just like to thank you so much for being here. And for anyone who tuned in or would like to share this or introduce Karina to someone, this interview will be published up on our YouTube channel and our blog here over the course of the next, within the next week for sure, and available for easy access. And I would just offer anyone tuning in, please, if you have not done so already, subscribe to our podcast, Multiply Your Success, if you'd like great content. And Karina, I just think oh, wait, we've got one hand up. All right. Okay, Patricia, go for it. Go ahead and unmute there.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
All right. I'm in the, I have a tutorial program and another program where we honor educators. And we were told we're 25 years, and we were told that it would be best to franchise. And my question is, we have a guidebook that helps someone who is working with us or ourselves of what we do every year. And my question is, in your franchise, in franchising, does the franchisor need to provide a guidebook for the franchisee?
So it's pretty much like an operations manual, which is essentially, yes, it's a guidebook, kind of just showing them the ins and outs of how it's run, because it's essentially just one system. When, for example, you go to a McDonald's, it's all branded the same and it's all run the same. You're getting the same Big Mac, yes, one location from the other. So that's pretty much what a guidebook or an operations manual does.
And Patricia, and just as a shameless plug for Big Sky, that's part of what we do in helping our clients through this process, is help build those manuals and documents out to get you ready for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And by the way, Patricia, in terms of that book, even if you decide to take that task on by yourself, just on a separate conversation, I'd be happy to talk through that with you. I know Karina would be happy to talk through that. She's been through that process. I've helped hundreds of companies go through this. So even on one-off, I'd be happy to spend some time with you. No cost, just let's have a conversation about what you're thinking about doing and give you some ideas, suggestions, and advice on some best practices.
Okay, so part of the franchise package is this guidebook.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
And it could also combine perhaps of small videos showing different aspects of the business.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's a guidebook plus other visual aids or helpful aids that help people learn that. And what about the same thing with the financial system, with the taxes and the chart of accounts? Is that part of that section is part of the guidebook?
Generally speaking, the chart of accounts and some of the financial management, yes, that's going to be part of the manual that's included. Okay. Absolutely. So that's where when Karina and I were talking about just talking about that chart of accounts and really how she works with collaborating with her clients, yes, with the franchisor and with the franchisee, and just making sure that's accurate. That's a big benefit. And one of the things you definitely want to, work through.
Okay.
Yeah, and I help with that aspect of it. Shameless plug now. I help with creating the chart of accounts and just developing all of that back end financial part of it too.
Mhm.
That will go into the package. All right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you,
I will
Patricia.
contact you. If you have my email, please, Karina, you were too fast for me. So I don't have either one of you, I don't have your contact information.
Okay. I'll put it in the chat and then
Okay.
we could take it from there. But yeah, I'm happy to just talk to you. I don't charge for just a conversation. So happy to help.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
Oh, I see it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, well, great. Well, do we have other questions? I saw a few come through in the chat box, just confirming where Karina, it looks like people are asking where Karina is located. She's up in the Jacksonville area out in Florida, but she services nationally and I would imagine internationally as needed. But is most of your work national? Where is that, Karina?
So actually, most of mine are in Florida, but I have a few in like California. I have one in Oregon. So I'm all over the US. I actually have one person that wants to onboard me to do a farm in Dominican Republic. So I'm really excited about that. My uncle owns a farm, so that's something that I kind of have experience with running and everything. So that's more of a passion project, but yeah, mostly all over the US.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Perfect. Well, great. And thank you all for being here. So Karina, her email again is just Karina, Karina at Bravo1. That's just the number one, Bravo1projects.com. And as she said, she may have the world's longest email. I think mine is in contention. So we have several long emails there as well. So Karina, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and we're grateful for it. Thank you everyone for tuning in today, and have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.